Hello, it's Chris Hynes from Wealthi. I hope you're doing well today. Today I just wanted to run through a quick breakdown talking about a city in Australia that we've currently got our eyes on very closely. We're looking at exploring some opportunities in Adelaide at the moment. I suppose a lot of you who are based in Australia have probably seen a lot of articles over the past few weeks, or really throughout January, talking about the growth that Adelaide experienced last year and how it's really going to sit at the top of the ranks in terms of growth this year. So we'll run through a couple of points explaining what sort of projects are coming forth in Adelaide at the moment, how population has grown over the past 5 years, what it's projected to do in the next 5 to 10 years as well. We'll run over some estimates for growth this year as well in terms of property prices, look at some of the figures around how much it's grown over the past 12 months as well, but it should paint a pretty good idea and give you a good understanding of the Adelaide property market as a whole. So to start off with, we're going to look at the CoreLogic figures. So as of last year, and these are the from the monthly index that the CoreLogic researchers released, Adelaide, as of the past 12 months, saw an increase in dwelling values by 24.8% over the past 12 months, changed month to month, and these numbers were taken as of the 31st of January 2022, so about 4 days ago, and at the time the change month on month was about 2.18%. So as you can see, that is standing head and shoulders above the rest. Really, Adelaide and Brisbane are seeing a lot of growth in the start of this year. A lot of people are still very interested in those markets. It ticks the box from an affordability standpoint. It's a more accessible market to access when you compare it to the likes of your Sydney and your Melbourne, and from a lifestyle perspective, which is what a lot of people are now looking to achieve with where they're purchasing, where they're deciding to move, and it's really you could say a lifestyle move as well. So great to see that we have seen some very strong growth in Adelaide thus far. Over the past 12 months, of course, there was a lot of growth, 24.8%. And then at the start of this year, we've already seen 2.18%. So some very, very strong growth there. And I mentioned briefly around the affordability standpoint. So these numbers were taken as of December 2021 from Domain, and they're talking about the average house prices across Australia. Now, as you can see, Sydney's median house price sits at about $1.6 million at the moment. It saw a 33% increase year on year to December 2021. Melbourne's currently at $1.1 million, saw an 18.6% increase year on year. Brisbane about $792,000, 25%. And then you've got Adelaide, which sits at $731,547. It did see a massive gain of 27.5% last year. But as you can see from those numbers, when you're comparing it to the major capital cities in Australia, it is substantially more affordable to places like your Sydney and like your Melbourne, and it's somewhere that is very much, you could say, going through a lot of regeneration at the moment. There's a lot of investment being pumped into the city to really bring it up to the standard that you could say your Brisbane's and your Melbourne and your Sydney's are at, and really trying to elevate it within its market or local markets within the Australian market. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to with Adelaide. I think we're going to continue to see some strong growth this year. There was an article that was released by the AFR a couple of weeks ago, beginning of January, and according to CBA is forecasting Brisbane dwelling prices to climb by 9% over the next 12 months, Adelaide about 6%. Although you look at some of the other reports that are out there, there's a few different researchers and different data gathering sites, and they're projecting about 10 to 15% price growth this year in places like your Brisbane and Adelaide. So I think as a whole, it's somewhere that is still set to see a lot of growth. I think that the fact that it's a more attractive place to be purchasing an investment as well at the moment, given the growth that we've seen across the country, it's somewhere that still has all the amenity. It's still a major city. It's somewhere that you have an international airport. You've got your major corporates that are based in the city as well. We're seeing a lot of growth in the city. We're seeing a lot of money put into developments and infrastructure projects. to improve connectivity around the city. So I think all of these factors are going to have a massive part to play on the Adelaide market, and a reason why we're looking at it very closely. Lastly, there was another article that was released by the Adelaide Independent News, and they had a chat to some of the CoreLogic researchers and some of the banks as well, or local banks. So average first home buyer size in South Australia, which in September hit new highs of $346,000, is $41,000 more than the same time last year. So as we mentioned, that growth that we saw over the past 12 months, and it's not just at that median house price mark, that median house price sitting around the $740,000 mark. And in terms of people, first home buyers that are getting into the market, you can still see that there's a lot of activity in that first home buyers market itself. People, young people or people that are looking to get themselves on the property ladder are still very keen to do so in Adelaide. So it's fantastic to see that all ends of the market are growing in Adelaide as a whole. Now, I just wanted to run through this article here quickly. This has been released by the Urban Developer. I'm sure many of you are aware of the Urban Developer website, and they talk about the infrastructure projects or major projects that have been approved in cities across the country, give a nice little analysis of each project itself. So we'll run through a couple of them in this quickly. I won't go through all 20 of them, but by all means, feel free to search up the Urban Developer, have a look at the projects that they have mentioned within this article itself, but we'll run through it now. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot of talk about the projects that are happening in Adelaide. We're seeing a lot of money thrown into the city at the moment. As you can see in this article behind me, Australia's fifth largest city has recently been boosted by a $17.9 billion infrastructure spend with 130 active work sites across the city. So it's not just focusing on one major project and putting all their eggs in one basket. They're looking to improve the city as a whole, improve that connectivity, improve roads, improve the public transport as well, add new court or office buildings, commercial developments as well, activating mixed-use spaces and residential developments, and really trying to activate the city that little bit more as well. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to in terms of developments that we are going to see over the next few years in Adelaide that will be rolled out. Now, in terms of where the most money is being put in terms of that total $17.9 billion, there's been $1.95 billion put towards a new hospital, and they're also looking at developing the state's first 5-star hotel in nearly 30 years. So you can see that they're not just focusing on one sector of the industry. They're looking from a tourism perspective, from a healthcare perspective, really trying to activate the commercial sector, rental growth in terms of commercial office space. In Adelaide, we're seeing some very strong growth prior to the pandemic. I think that's going to come back. We saw it similar to your Brisbane and Melbourne's about 5 years ago. You saw the opportunity that Brisbane presented from an affordability standpoint for a lot of corporate businesses. They saw the opportunity to relocate their headquarters from somewhere like Melbourne up to somewhere like Brisbane. They save themselves a fortune on rent every year, and I think we'll see a similar pattern happen with Adelaide, given the infrastructure that's going to be in place, and it is still one of the major cities in the country as well. Now, Festival Towers is another one of the large developments. This one's being developed by Walker Corp. It's a $1 billion project in Adelaide city centre. Be large-scale mixed-use commercial and retail development, along with 5,000 square metres of city square and public realm. Commercial tower of 40,000 square metres of premium office space behind an old Parliament House. The Adelaide Plaza itself, the Adelaide Festival Plaza, will also include a new square and other public spaces, a new entry of Adelaide Railway Station, which is a $90 million upgrade to Adelaide Festival Square, and the expansion of Sky City Casino as well. That's under construction. It's a 27-storey office building. You've got the Sofitel Adelaide, which is the 5-star hotel that I mentioned briefly before. That's a $150 million development that will house Sofitel Adelaide, Adelaide's first 5-star hotel in almost 3 decades. You've got the Australian Bragg Centre. It's going to be a clinical and research facility within Adelaide's $3.6 billion Biomed City precinct as well. So it's fantastic to see that there's this much investment being thrown into a city, and not just thrown into one major project, but really trying to activate the whole city as a whole. As you can see, there are plenty of, or a heap of developments here to run through. You've got $120 million tower for the Freemasons Hall in North Terrace. You've got the 60 King William Street. That is a $450 million development by Charter Hall in the CBD as well. That's going to be 40,000 square meters of office space, 3,500 square meters of retail space spanning over 14 levels. You've got the Riverbank Arena as well, a new $700 million indoor stadium, dubbed the Riverbank Arena, promised by South Australia's Liberal state government exactly 1 year out from the 2022 election. This will be a 15,000 person stadium. Hold games like your netball, your basketball. It'll also hold conventions and events and concerts and things like that as well. So it's fantastic to see that there really is a lot of investment at the moment. As you can see, we've got the markets, which are going to be which is a $400 million mixed use development in Adelaide's Central Market precinct as well. This one will feature about 15,000 square meters of A-grade office space. It'll also have a 249 room hotel and about 210 apartments. And as you can see as well, 15% of apartments will be affordable living. So it's great that they've got that component to really help first home buyers get themselves on the property ladder as well. So I won't go through any more of these. If you want to have a look at this link, by all means, we can send that across to you and have a quick look. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the population growth in Adelaide as well. Now, in terms of population figures, so Adelaide's population currently sits at about 1.7 million people. As there wasn't a lot of migration into the state over the past 12 months, given border restrictions and I guess the overseas migration component. There was none of that taking place. However, they still recorded, you could say, a positive migration into the state. They saw positive growth in terms of the population itself. And as you can see by the figures down in this little chart at the bottom of my screen, in terms of net overseas migration, that was down 3,278 people. Net interstate migration itself was up 704 people, but net migration as a whole was down 2,574 people. Now, as a whole, population growth to June 2021 for the year, when you're looking at the 12-month statistics, they recorded 2,966 new people living in South Australia. A lot of those came from births as well, so that's more of a natural increase, but nonetheless, you're looking at that 2,966 people, seeing growth of 0.17% over the past 12 months, and we've seen a significant amount of growth in the city. Without, we haven't seen the same growth in population that we've seen in a lot of other major cities in Australia, but nonetheless, Adelaide has managed to record some very, very strong price growth in properties, and the reason for that is the fact that Adelaide is actually the second most dense city in Australia as well. So as you can see here, Melbourne is the densest city in Australia, and that's set to surpass Sydney's population in the next 7 to 10 years as well. So Adelaide, as you can see, 404 people to every square kilometre. So it is a very, very dense city, which means that the supply that is available in the market in Adelaide at the moment is being snatched up very quickly. I think it's just going to increase more and more when the net overseas or net migration come back. Overseas migration comes back into Adelaide as well. It's going to drive up property prices that little bit more. As you saw by all those projects that are underway at the moment, there's the need for skilled workers to be in Adelaide. They need they need people in that labour force to be working on these projects. So I think we're going to see some very positive effects this year in the Adelaide market. I think it's something that we've definitely got to keep our eye on and monitor over the next month or so, and see how the growth really does track. But as a whole, looking at the big picture, the growth that we've experienced over the 12 months, I think that this year we're going to continue to see growth in Adelaide. I don't think it'll be as strong as the growth that we saw last year, because that was you could say a record year, the boom of the property industry. I think we're going to see about 10% price growth in the Adelaide market as a whole. As we've just ran through, there's a lot of talk in the market at the moment about people or opportunities in Adelaide itself. It ticks the box from an affordability standpoint. It's a more accessible location for people to be buying that may not be able to enter your Melbourne's, your Brisbane or your Sydney markets. As you saw, population is increasing as well. In fact, on the topic of population, I'll show you some of the figures over the past few years. So as you can see, they've seen some very consistent growth year on year, let's say the last 5 years. So 2021 to 2016, 1.82%, 1.49%, 1.47%, 2%, 1.49% and 1.47%. So I think we'll continue to see some positive growth. Borders reopening are going to help substantially for that. There's a lot of investment being thrown into the city. They're focusing on all industry, all sectors within the city itself. So I think there's some great things to look forward to. But hopefully this has given you a nice little breakdown of Adelaide as a whole. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or the team. We're all more than happy to have a chat with each and every one of you. And I look forward to hearing from you all very soon. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.